Let's talk about what the U.S. Coast Guard Lake Michigan sector is capable of doing here when there is a boat that's struggling. You mentioned it is surface level, trying to help those people or perhaps pull a boat to shore. Kind of talk about what the U.S. Coast Guard Lake Michigan sector is capable of doing here.
Yes, sir. So we've got two different types of boat. We've got our response boat small and response boat medium that we can deploy from our stations. We've got 9 stations throughout Lake Michigan. We cover an area that's roughly about 300 miles by 100 miles wide. And in addition to those resources, we also have aircraft that we can use as well, helos that we can deploy. So we're capable of responding near shore and to respond to those cases that are further offshore.
Let's talk about the importance of having this resource on a massive lake.
It's amazing to see how many people are out on the water at any given time. There's a lot of boats out there. Every day we're coming across cases and people are calling and asking for assistance. And so it's very important that we have those resources available, and they've been very valuable in helping find people.
You mentioned earlier, you guys respond to up to 800 incidents on a given year. How often are those life-threatening situations?
It really depends. I've had days where we've had like 29 lives assisted, anywhere from people having a boat broke down, maybe vessels taken on water, to emergencies where we had boats that sank and we have people that are actively in the water. And so it really depends. It can be a very random day.
Are you aware if there are submersibles in Lake Michigan? I did some research. I think the Viking Cruise Line does some of that along the shipwrecks over the years. Are you aware of if that takes place on Lake Michigan?
No, I'm not aware of that at all.
Okay. I guess, what is the process when a call comes in to responding to a boat or people in the water?
So normally we get reports either through Channel 16 and Marine Band Radio, VHF, or we get a phone call directly to our unit, either from 911 or from the person that's in distress themselves. We take that information, we gather what we call our Big Five, trying to get things like their location, a description of what's going on, how many people. We're worried about the safety at that moment, and so making sure that they have things like life jackets, reliable communications on board, so that way we can effect our rescue. We can get our resources launched and on scene as quickly as possible.
Say if a boat does submerge, talk about why the U.S. Coast Guard Lake Michigan sector is unable to go underneath the surface.
So our folks are trained, our station folks are trained on that surface rescue. Once you start going below surface, we're talking about a different set of skills, and it's just, that's not a very typical experience that we have for the Coast Guard. And so our guys are actively trained every day on recovery from the surface, scanning shorelines, scanning the water to see if there's anything that's out there that might be distress.
Given the large amount of search and rescue calls you guys respond to, what message would you send to boaters out on the water this summer? There are a ton of them.
Yes. Number one, the easiest thing you can do is always bring a life jacket for every person that's on board. The easiest, most effective thing that you can do if something happens, you have that life jacket, your survivability goes way up. The second thing that you can do is have reliable communications, and so I recommend, if you're a boater, that you have that VHF Marine Band Channel 16 radio tuned and ready to go, that you understand how to use it. And then you can also do other things like buy personal locator beacons that can talk to satellites, that can feed that information directly back to us. So we have a position, we know where you are. It really takes the search out of the search and rescue piece.
Are most of your search and rescue missions along Milwaukee's coastline?
I would say we probably have a majority of our cases to the south end, more towards Chicago area. We do have some off of Milwaukee, tend to be more of the disabled boaters, but yes.
Do you know the depth of Lake Michigan? Isn't it some 400 feet?
Some areas are pretty deep. I want to say like 423 feet is the deepest part of Lake Michigan.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it for the interview. Is there anything you have taken away from this situation on the North Atlantic?
These types of scenarios really take a toll on everybody. It takes a toll on the family members. it takes a toll on the rescuers because you're put into a situation that's very difficult to solve. I love it when I have a case where we can get on scene and we can help somebody out and everybody has a favorable ending and everything works smooth. Cases like this, things are very difficult and you can only anticipate so many different things happening. So it's just, it's frustrating to see some of these things happen.
Since you've been doing this for 10 years, is it rare for a boat to submerge on Lake Michigan? Do you see it often?
We do see cases where boats submerge. Whether it's, it just depends. What's the boating season look like? We do tend to get some that have, that are taken on water. A lot of times we're able to get them back to shore before things go too far to the south. But there are times when we do have boaters that do find themselves in the water.